2016, I was invited to partake in the ceremonial drinking of ayahuasca where I reside in Canada. It was two ceremonies, both conducted under an ayahuascero who had trained with a well-known Peruvian Shipibo shaman. I had researched ayahuasca for several years and had read many positive reviews of people healing or moving through blocks in life. I had not read or even seen anything regarding the dangers of negative outcomes or the development of psychological disorders post-use. I had a fairly healthy life. I didn't do any other drugs besides the occasional marijuana edible. I had some anxiety and depression over the course of my life, but never needing to be medicated. I was very curious about this medicine and took the offer when invited, and I made sure to ask if only there were two plants being used, chacruna and capi, which they said yes. The day came, and there were about 8 of us attending. The other attendees were doctors, counselors, and other health professionals, which added to my sense that there weren't any major risks associated with it. I followed the diet regimen and preparatory guidelines, which needed to be followed 1 month before the ceremony. The first ceremony was interesting. I was happy. I had many visuals that were interesting. Most I didn't understand, like alien creatures that all seemed to be in a hurry to get somewhere. I saw a snake. It was distant from me and seemed to be checking me out, but never coming near. Then towards the end of the ceremony, something shifted. I started to feel a heaviness come over me, and then a primal fear. Was I dying? I began to feel grotesque, and my surroundings took on a darker tone, death and rot. I began to panic and ask for help. The shaman came over and sung an ikaro, and I let out a deep-rooted purge that seemed to come from the very depth of my bowels. Instantly, the panic and grotesque sensations disappeared. More relaxed, I lay there and drifted off to sleep. The next day I felt okay, but there was slight anxiety that had surfaced. I let the shaman know I was feeling different. She said it was okay to proceed with the next ceremony and that I needed more work. The evening came and the second ceremony began. I drank the brew and laid on my mat and waited. Within 25 minutes, I began to feel an intense surge of anxiety. I had not been thinking about anything, just calmly waiting for the effects to take place. The anxiety grew in magnitude and became so intense, I was having a hard time being still. Then, I went into flight or fight response. My heart was racing. I could feel the adrenaline rushing through me. I was panicking. I felt like I needed to leave. I jumped up from my mat and ran out of the room. I felt like I was going insane. I couldn't calm myself. I went outside to the porch, hoping the air would do me some good, but it didn't. I wanted to jump off the porch to flee. I have never felt this intense of anxiety in my life. Someone from the group came out and checked on me. They saw the distress I was in and coaxed me back into the ceremonial space. The shaman did some work on me, and after some time, I was beginning to settle down and laid back on my mat. Then some visuals started. They all had a dark tone. I began to have auditory hallucinations. I heard someone speaking to me. The voice was saying things like, "You don't even believe yourself." Paranoia set in. I tried to surround myself with love, but everything good seemed to melt away. I started to feel distant from everything, lonely and hopeless. Then the grotesque rotten death feeling started to surface again. I was feeling like I was dying. My body was heavy and limp. My hands and arms looked pale and ghastly. I was in a state of freeze and felt a fear that no human should ever feel. My surroundings looked like I was in some kind of death lodge with suffering all around me. The visuals turned static, and I started to feel like I had lost my mind. I kept getting up and going outside in an attempt to ground myself and breathe in the air while wishing the night was over. And finally, it was. The next morning, I woke up feeling disoriented. I was pretty shaken up by the experience, but was glad it was over. I spoke to the shaman about what I had experienced. They said I would start to feel better and that I had been releasing traumas. 3 days after ceremony, is when I became psychologically unwell. It started with panic attacks, body tremoring, nightmares, and surges of intense anxiety. I also had an intense ear ringing with noise sensitivity. Then, the flashbacks started. I was re-experiencing that grotesque feeling and primal fear. I became more and more unwell. Unable to cope, I was admitted for a few days at emergency psychological services in an acute stress response. They put me on benzodiazepines and sent me home. As the days went on, I did not recover. I had to take a leave from my job as I could no longer work. I continued to experience flashbacks, panic attacks, insomnia, extreme startle response, and noise sensitivity. I couldn't go into crowds or drive and had a hard time talking with people. I started to see a psychiatrist who had experience with psychedelic drugs and research. After 4 months of dealing with these symptoms, I was diagnosed with psychedelic-induced PTSD. It has been a year, and I have not gotten much better. In fact, some days I feel worse than my initial reaction. I continue to suffer on a daily basis with panic attacks, hallucinations, severe anxiety, and agitation. I have tried a number of therapies and medications, but so far have not recovered. I just pray that I recover from this. It has truly been a harrowing experience. Update. I was placed on an antipsychotic and my symptoms have gone away. I do have to continue to take the meds daily or symptoms return. I do have a better functioning life now and will hopefully be returning to work. PTSD versus psychosis. It is hard to know what is incurred from my ayahuasca experience.